Yeah, the Amstrad GX4000, the ill-fated Amstrad GX4000, the only Amstrad console that only had 27 games released. This console arrived to the market in 1990 and by 1991 it was discontinued. It was a tremendous flop from Amstrad in a time where the market was flooded with 16-bit systems, 16-bit home computers and even consoles. The Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo were already arriving at the scene, and this system, this 8-bit system came out, and as I said, only 27 games were released, and the company that always supported this system from day one was Ocean Software. There are amazing games from Ocean. This console came bundled with 2 controllers, obviously, and the game Burning Rubber, a racing game. Yeah, because I love my racing games. And this was a freaking incredible offer, a Christmas present from my family, and I'm truly grateful. This is not hard to get, but it is expensive. It was Amstrad's short-lived attempt to enter the games console market, and it was an upgraded design based on the CPC technology. Yeah, the Amstrad CPC was huge, mainly in Spain and in France, if I'm not mistaken. And it was even compatible with most of the CPC Plus software that was already in the market. And it was priced at $99.99, and games would cost around the £25 mark. Ocean Software was practically the only one interested in getting games, in bringing games to the ill-fated Amstrad GX4000. Just to share with you the short history of this incredible system, yeah, from Amstrad. The Amstrad GX4000 was placed on store shelves in September of 1990 and 8 months later was discontinued. Around 15,000 machines were sold over the course of its lifetime, and as said prior, the number of games available was just 27. 26 if we exclude Gaza 2, whose cartridge is missing in action. As told on my episode related to Total Recall, Gaza 2 was being developed by a UK-based software house known as Active Minds, but these guys were everything but active and ended up crushing and disappearing from the scene because of the stunt they were trying to pull on Ocean Software while developing Total Recall. Even so, Gaza 2 was sent to at least 3 magazines for review: Amstrad Action, Mean Machines and the French Amstrad 100%, and these magazines were known for being true to their principles of making things the right way and not for reviewing unfinished games like what the Spanish Micro Hobby did with their review of the unfinished version 1 of Total Recall in development by Active Minds. Check my history and origins video related to Total Recall to know more about that crazy story. In these later years, the Amstrad GX4000 has become solely a collector's machine based on curiosity, cause trying to go for the full set of its games library is a pretty damn hard task to accomplish. Check out these prices on eBay. Definitely not for every wallet out there. Obviously that after all these years, a cartridge replacement would appear in the market so that users can load games from a micro SD card or even directly from a PC through USB. Strangely, in order to use it with the GX4000, the power supply must be replaced. Amstrad suffered a terrible year back in 1989. Profits dropped from 160 million to 76 million pounds. Their PC 2000 series was not selling well, just like the slow sales performances of their own video recorders and audio systems, which even made Amstrad to abandon this specific side of their business. And after 6 years of success, mainly in France and in Spain, the CPC was also starting to lose ground and interest. So in April of 1990, Alan Sugar, Amstrad CEO, announced that the company would introduce one product every month. So entering the console market was no surprise. Even Commodore was starting to tease the industry and gamers with a video game console based on the highly popular C64 home computer, conclusions attained by witnessing the huge sales success of both the NES and the Master System. The GX4000 was unveiled alongside the 464 Plus and the 6128 Plus computers, two machines based on the architecture of the CPC 464 and the 6128. Just like their own Sinclair cousins, the ZX Spectrum 128K Plus 2 and Plus 3. Those came with either a built-in tape deck or a disk drive and 64 or 128K of memory, and they also had a cartridge slot on the side. So the GX4000 was basically a Plus computer, but solely with a cartridge slot packed inside this futuristic-looking plastic shell. Computer & Video Games magazine praised the 32 colors that the GX4000 could display on screen, from a palette of 4096, and editor Julian Rignall further stated that, and I quote, "The GX4000 is a graphically superb console, is technically far better than the Nintendo and Sega Master System, and has a very exciting lineup of games in the not-too-distant future." The console was designed in the usual Amstrad way. The casing came first, and the mainboard and all its components were made to fit. And besides the previously mentioned expanded palette, hardware sprites and soft scrolling were the three main features of the GX4000 that would place it in direct competition against Atari, Nintendo and Sega 8-bit machines. But it simply arrived too late. The Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo were coming to the scene with much better hardware, not mentioning that 16-bit gaming was already full steam by that time with systems like the Amiga. So a new 8-bit console, no matter how cheap it was and if it had dedicated graphics or not, was just a bit too late into the video game market. The GX4000 was indeed a revolution for Amstrad. It was built specifically for games. So the big problem here was that it heavily relied on the third-party developers like Ocean, Gremlin, Logiciel and Titus. To help drive the sales of the GX4000, Amstrad certified to give customers something to play right out of the box, so they bundled Burning Rubber, a game developed by Ocean Software that really looked amazing, with great use of the console's extra colors, but its chunky pixels were too blocky for the time, so it really felt a bit dated. Burning Rubber is a sort of unofficial sequel to Whack Le Mans that featured details that were absent from the conversion from arcade to home computers of that amazing racing game that made my day back in 1988 on my 128K Plus 2A. For instance, the color changes as day turns to night and the tumbling car crash are now possible to achieve with this new hardware. Most of the games released for the GX4000 were just simple straight ports from cassette to cartridge. But even so, from the 27 titles available, and besides Burning Rubber, I have to highlight a couple more, the best from the ones that really took advantage of what the console's extra hardware could do. Some of them are also among my favorites on the ZX Spectrum and on the Commodore Amiga. Tennis Cup 2 is often remembered as one of the finest tennis sims ever to grace an 8-bit system. It offered some of the best graphics and sound on the GX4000. It wasn't just another direct port from cassette. This updated cartridge version featured an updated intro, more in-game options, 2 new tournament modes, and a much improved color palette that showcased a whopping 21 colors compared to the only 4 in the original. Selecting a 1 or 2 player game opens up the option of being able to play either a singles or doubles match, which in turn leads to further options that allows us to alter the match length, the in-game speed, the screen view, and even the attributes of our own player. A training mode is also available to improve our swing, serve or shot skills. The last 2 options, Tournament and Davis Cup, allows us to pit our skills against the world's finest. From the masters of movie tie-in adaptations Ocean Software comes RoboCop 2, that is graphically and musically stunning, making full use of the console's color palette and with some of the best hardware scrolling ever seen on an Amstrad machine. It set the standard that many failed to achieve. It offers 3 action-packed platform levels, 2 puzzle levels and 2 shooting gallery levels. The platform levels look stunning and run smoothly with a mixture of bad guys, spikes, rolling barrels and lifts to deal with. In the puzzle levels our directives are all mixed up and it's up to us to reroute Robo's circuit boards and collect microchips to help to restore him back to complete operational status. Each of the puzzle levels are well thought out and are, once again, well presented, musically and graphically speaking. Switchblade was Gremlin's first and only venture onto the GX4000, and it was an enhanced version of their already brilliant game. We take the role of the last of the Blade Knights, who is on a mission to rid the planet Thrax of its evil dictator, Havoc. For that, he must assemble the 16 missing parts of the legendary Fire Blade, so that he can use it to strike Havoc down once and for all. While the game often received criticism for its lack of color and plain backdrops, it more than made up for this with its playability. A brilliant platform game that offered a huge landscape that required lots of exploring. Making our own map was a good idea, and there were more than one route that could be taken. And exploring was rewarded with bonuses and hidden screens that would lead to better power-ups and weapons. The enemies were relentless, and we pretty much had to punch, kick, hack and shoot every step of the way. As seen throughout video games' own history, the most simplistic games are often the best and most addictive, and Pang is no exception. A mixture of single-screen shoot-'em-up, platformer and puzzle game that will keep us coming back for more and more. I speak for myself cause I'm constantly playing the arcade original on my homemade MAME arcade cabinet. As mentioned so many times before on other It's a Pixelthing videos, balloons are threatening several of Earth's most important landmarks, and it's up to us to take on the role of the Buster Brothers and shoot those balloons that burst into smaller ones, and so on until the screen is clear, so that we can move on to the next location. Ocean Software really did a phenomenal job with this conversion, bringing together a combination of spot-on, unrelenting gameplay, great sounding music and gorgeous graphics with colorful backgrounds that made full use of the extensive palette of the GX4000. Two-player co-op is also available, offering a truly enjoyable couch play experience. This is, with no doubt, one of the finest, if not the best, arcade conversions ever to be produced for an 8-bit system. Stuart Middleton, programmer of the arcade conversion of Pang for the GX4000, said in an interview, and I quote, "Amstrad underestimated the competition that they were facing and were looking backwards rather than forwards with their hardware design." Other games like Toki were planned and even advertised, but sadly never saw the light of day. And I truly believe that it would have been an incredible arcade conversion, just like Pang was. Even so, the homebrew community is healthy and active, and back in 2018, a remake of the classic coin-op Ghosts and Goblins was released for free for the GX4000. The original conversion by Elite Systems from 30 years ago for the regular CPC range of Amstrad computers was such a letdown, with missing levels and even with Arthur not being able to lose his armor. Also, an overhauled 128K exclusive version for the CPC 6128 Plus computer is in the works and coming soon. And besides Ghouls and Ghosts, other iconic titles may surface in the future for the GX4000, like Sonic GX for example.
The GX4000 remains a piece of gaming history. Nowadays it's an extremely difficult system to collect for, and as you've seen, prices of the rarest titles are just for a very restricted group of collectors. It really failed to impress due to the outdated 8-bit technology and lack of support from software houses who were by that time all moving on to 16-bit technology. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of It's a Pixel Thing, so if you did, you know the drill! Also, if you really dig what I'm doing, please consider supporting the show through Patreon. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in my next video. Cheers!